food and fashion and art and music.
Did you expect to be the president, or was it something you were asked?
Being Italian is a lot more than talking about, making meatballs.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Hardcore Italians podcast. I got the president of the National Italian American Foundation, Robert Allegrini, here. Robert, thanks for coming in. Got us some espressos, as you mentioned.
I'm all set. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah, no, thank you too for coming. It's an honor to have you here. I've been saying too, it's an honor just to be working with the NIAF, period. So it's a big deal. I treat our partnership seriously and really appreciate you and everything that we've been doing together. It's awesome.
And we're very grateful, and I want to talk to you about doing some more, actually.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
We are very appreciative of all the collaboration that you've offered thus far, and we think your organization is great and want to do more with you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think our missions are aligned, just trying to keep the Italian traditions and culture going, and that's why it was cool. I want to ask too, because I didn't know you were in Chicago when we met at the JCCIA event.
Yeah.
And you said you were from Chicago. I was surprised, So what's your Chicago story a bit?
Let me tell you, I'm an original hardcore Italian from way back. I was actually the executive director of the Joint Civic Committee of the Italian Americans. When I was in my late 20s, back in, I hate to say it, in the 1980s.
Yeah, okay.
And then I have always remained involved in the Italian community, even though I had a 30-year career in hospitality, the last 10 of which were spent as Vice President of Public Relations for Hilton and all of the hotels in North and South America. But over the course of my hospitality career, I always participated in the Italian community. I was president for 3 years of the Italian Chamber of Commerce of the Midwest. I was the founding delegate of the Academy of Italian Cuisine in Chicago. And then I have been involved in NIAF since the late 80s. I was first an area coordinator, then a regional vice president, and then for more than a decade I served on the board and was a board officer before becoming president just about 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because that was one of my questions is how'd you go from hospitality into becoming the president of NIAF, so that's interesting.
I can tell you, it's a lot more fun to be a professional Italian.
Yeah, true. Okay, so you've been involved since you were young then. That's awesome. Yes. So how'd you start getting involved in...
I think it is just because I grew up in an atmosphere where there was a lot of emphasis on Italy. I had a grandmother that lived with us, and she always spoke very affectionately of Italy. I heard Italian spoken, although I really had to go to school to learn the language because both of my parents spoke perfect Italian, but amongst each other and with me, they always spoke in English. So I was fortunate to grow up in Elmwood Park, which offered Italian in high school. So I had 4 years of it in high school, and then I had a summer at the University for Foreigners in Perugia, Italy, and then I was fortunate enough to win a graduate fellowship through the region of Tuscany to study foreign affairs in Florence for a year, and so all my classes were in Italian, so it was sink or swim at that point.
Yeah, true. Wow. Yeah, I feel like your career's very interesting. It seems like a lot of hard work. You're a writer too, right?
Yeah. I do love writing. It's a lot of what I did for Hilton. I was a contributor for many years on a regular basis to Franoi and still periodically do that. And then I'm also the honorary consul for the Republic of San Marino in a 5-state area. And San Marino, as I'm sure most of your listeners know, is a small country completely surrounded by Italy. So I try and keep its reputation strong in a 5-state jurisdiction that goes from Illinois all the way down to Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So just tell me a little bit, how'd you get all the success in your career? It's a lot of accolades, I feel like,
Well, yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but I have to say, knowing Italian really helped because when I started in the hospitality industry, I was hired by a hotel called Mayfair Region. It was a luxury hotel on East Lakeshore Drive. It's not there any longer, but I was hired in particular to work all of the consulates. So the fact that I had some kind of diplomatic background, having studied foreign affairs, the fact that I spoke Italian and some Spanish and some French really helped me, and that launched my hospitality career. And I've always done the Italian work in parallel, and so the Hilton, where I spent the bulk of my career, really became the hotel where most of the big Italian events in Chicago took place.
Like, did you expect to be the president, or was it something you were asked? Like, how did you become the president? It's such a big organization.
I finished my 20 years with Hilton, which meant that I qualified for all of the benefits that a long tenure with Hilton would give you. For example, I'm still afforded consideration as if I were a team member, even though I'm a retired team member. So
that's awesome.
At a certain point, I was more or less liberated from having to stay any longer with Hilton, and I was looking for a change, and the timing was perfect. So when the opportunity came along, I jumped at it because it is my passion. I love my heritage. I love what it means to be an Italian American, and that's something that we can talk about at length. Is what I feel it is to be an Italian American.
Yeah, I mean, expand on that a little bit more than just the feeling and everything.
I think we are such a force of good for the United States because we combine the best qualities of the Italian character and the best qualities of the American character, and that's an unbeatable combination, right? Because we're a very family-oriented culture, which is, I think, something that we've lost to a certain extent in this country. We bring to the rest of America so much of what makes life worth living, the appreciation for food and fashion and art and music. And above everything else, we bring a great sense of humanity to the United States. That's what I'm proudest of as an Italian American is the humanity that Italy has always stood for, always. And I always use the example of World War II when even though Italy was officially aligned with Germany, they never counteranced the final solution. They went out of their way. Their army, even though their army was allied with the Germans, and their diplomatic corps went out of their way to try and save all of the Jews in the Italian areas of control. And so one of the stories that's largely untold is that 85% of the Jewish population in Italy survived the war.
Oh, wow.
And it was because of the humanity of the Italian people and also of the Italian army and the Italian diplomatic service.
Wow.
So that's just one example. Another example that people don't know about is that there are more Italian peacekeepers in UN peacekeeping missions around the world than from any other European country. And the reason for that is that Italian peacekeepers are so valued because they're not racist. They are very fair with the people that they are working with. They don't consider themselves better than them, and they are just very humane. And so that's why they're employed in over 30 peacekeeping missions right now around the world. So when you take that aspect of what it means to be an Italian American and add it with the American values that are patriotism and our civic sense, which are two things which I still think largely are lacking in Italy, right? They don't have the civic sense that we do. Unfortunately, all you have to do is go and see the amount of graffiti that there is in Rome, for example.
Oh, really?
Not that we don't have it here, too, but it's far worse there. But we, as Italian Americans, take the best of the Italian character and the best of the American character, and that's what makes us a force of good for the country, and that's why I am proud to head up the National Italian American Foundation.
Yeah, I love it. I always say the best of both worlds, so I agree 100%. So I want to talk a little bit more about your responsibilities, but I feel like while you're on the topic of this, what are like ways to keep it going, like because it's kind of old school to think this way, I feel like, as an Italian American. Like, what are ways to keep it going and pass it down to the next generation so we don't lose
So you're absolutely right about that. So what I always say is that Italian grandmothers did a great job of teaching their grandkids about la cucina and la chiesa, the kitchen and the church. And not much else, unfortunately. And those are two important items. I would never sell it short. We all know that we eat better than anyone else in the world. We should all be proud that the Mother Church is based in Rome.
Yeah.
But there is so much more to our heritage and culture. So really, as president of the National Italian American Foundation, I want to orient more of our efforts towards grants. Right now we give out more than $1 million a year in scholarships and grants, and
Wow.
I really want to emphasize the grant portion of that, because I think there is so much more that Italian Americans need to learn about their
Yeah.
culture and heritage and their history, which they don't know and which they should know. Because
Yeah.
being Italian is a lot more than talking about, making meatballs. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's something, I want to touch on. Like, when I went to that event with you guys, it was inspiring. Like, I feel like with the Italian American culture, like, a lot of it is kind of more like gabagool and kind of playing on the stereotypes,
which drives me
Yeah.
bonkers.
When I went to that event in Washington with you guys, like, every person you had at that event, I was like, it just was inspiring just to see, like, other Italian celebrities and this and that. It was like just encouraging to see there's people that are really, like, professionals and doing good things, and, like,
Right.
you know what I mean? There's actually people out there that you could look up to as an Italian, where it's like
Beyond the stereotypes. You hit on the one that drives me crazy. It's kind of this Goomba kind
Yeah.
of culture that certain podcasts and certain websites actually play up, which really drives me crazy, because that is not the culture that I grew up with, nor that many Italian Americans that I know grew up with.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think too. Like, when I think about my Italian grandparents and just everyone I know in the Italian community, like, no one's really a character like that.
Right.
And you know what I mean? They're hardworking people, and they,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? They have goals, and they, like, made something for themselves from scratch. And I feel like not enough people see that side, and, like, including me, I just feel like on social media I don't really see that too often. Then I came to that event. I was
Right.
actually inspired. It kind of got me inspired to, like, work harder at hardcore,
Well,
because I'm like,
I'm grateful for that. You'll
Yeah.
certainly see it on our social media,
Yeah.
because I really won't let any of that stereotypical stuff into our social media. It is
Yeah.
really based on what Italian culture and heritage is really truly about, and not the stereotypical.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's a harder goal, because obviously it's not, you know what I mean? It's not as popular to, like, go viral with that kind of stuff, but it's more important. And I always feel like if I rather 10 people see something more important than.
You're absolutely correct, and I think I just complimented you, as you know,
Yeah.
the other day for one of your posts that you did, talking about what's happening in Italy, talking about what Giorgia Meloni was saying. That's the kind of thing that I think your viewers, your listeners, need to know more about, because Italy
100%.
is so much more than just food and
Yeah.
and fashion. Those are wonderful aspects of Italy, but it's a G7 country with an important foreign policy, getting more important all the time, and that's why one of the things that we do at NIAF is we partner with Ambrosetti, which is Italy's leading think tank. And every year they have a conference in Italy. It's kind of like the Italian version of the Davos conference. It brings
Okay.
together all the top leaders from Italy and really around the world to talk about what's happening in Italy. And we've been a partner the last 2 years, and we have contributed white papers that were presented at the conference. One of the white papers 2 years ago was on the strategic importance of the Italy-U.S. relationship, because, again,
Yeah.
one of the things that aggravate me, you're going to
Yeah.
think that a lot of things aggravate me, and they do, but only because I don't think Italy gets the credit that it deserves. When the American news media talks about America's allies in Europe, it's always Britain, France, and Germany, to the exclusion of Italy, as if Italy didn't matter. So
Yeah.
we did this white paper that showed why, in so many different ways, Italy was actually a better and more important ally of the United States than Britain, France, and Germany. So that was what we worked on with them 2 years ago. Last year, we did another white paper on harnessing the power of the Italian diaspora, because
Yeah.
there is a global Italian diaspora of some 80 million people. That's more than live
Wow.
in Italy
Yeah.
itself.
Wow.
And we are spread literally all over the world. The current Prime Minister of Australia is of Italian descent.
Oh, wow.
And
know that.
so we really wanted to show the power that if we were all united, what we could bring to
Yeah.
Italy. So those
That's
are the
awesome.
kind of cerebral thought leadership type activities that the National Italian American Foundation participates in.
Yeah. And so what's your role and responsibilities and all that? Like, what's your, like, 9 to 5? It sounds like it's kind of, you know what I mean? Like, how would you even put that? Like, I have a hard time scheduling my day. You know what I mean? Like, how do you manage all that?
As a non-for-profit, a lot of the day is raising money to do all the good things that we do.
Yeah.
For example, this summer, we have a long-standing program called the Voyage of Discovery. We take young Italian Americans on their first time trip to Italy so that they can experience the land
That's
of
awesome.
their ancestors, and that's just one program. But everything that we do involves raising funds to be able to do it, and I think we do a great job with the limited resources we have.
Yeah.
And we really are the voice of the Italian American community in Washington. We work very closely with the Italian Embassy and also with the Italian American Congressional Delegation, which is comprised of some 40 senators and representatives of Italian descent. Few people realize that we now have had 3 speakers of the House of Representatives in a row of Italian descent. Everyone knows Nancy Pelosi is Italian by virtue of her name, but her successor, Kevin McCarthy, was half Italian.
Oh, wow.
Grandfather from Molise, very proud of that fact. And the current Speaker of the House, with the very American name of Michael Johnson, is half Italian, with his mother's family being from Sicily, as a lot of the Italians from New Orleans are of Sicilian descent. So we work with those individuals on issues of importance to the Italian community. Just yesterday, for example, we congratulated all those that very quickly really cleaned the horrible aftermath of the pro-Hamas protest that took place in Washington, and once again defaced the statue of Columbus. And yes, we are a pro-Columbus organization. That might aggravate some of your listeners, but the fact of the matter is that we do believe that Columbus was the catalyst for more than 5 centuries now of immigration for people from all over the world who are looking for better lives for their families.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with the Columbus thing, a lot of people don't realize it. Like, it's about celebrating immigration, period. And we're a country of immigrants.
Correct.
And like that should be the focus of that holiday. Like, that's what it's for. And I just don't understand why people want to just do away with it completely and not like we have to remember
Put
that.
It in context.
Yeah,
absolutely. You are entirely right, and I'm sure you know the story that the first Columbus Day came in the wake of the largest mass lynching in United States history, which was the lynching of I think it was 11 Sicilians in New Orleans, and Columbus Day was enacted after that to really serve as a vehicle to show that Italians had been involved in this country from the onset. And it wasn't the Italians who were the newcomers, but it was the other groups that came after Columbus.
Yeah. I guess since you're like involved in politics and stuff, because I feel like the media, if they were portraying it in a positive light, a million people would love Columbus Day. Right. But since they're portraying it in a negative light, everybody hates it. That's just my personal opinion. But is there a reason?
There's a modicum of truth for that. We are a non-partisan organization, so I like to say we work with everyone from Pelosi on the left to Pompeo on the right. As long as you're a proud Italian American, we will work with you. But by the same token, we are also proud defenders of the legacy of Columbus, and if you don't share that point of view, we're going to get into it with you.
Yeah, exactly. But is there a reason you think that they're trying to like?
It really goes through the whole woke culture. There's a certain element of the American populace that wants to blame Columbus for all the ills that have come afterward, which certainly were not intended by him at all. Yeah,
I agree. Okay, no, that's interesting. And how'd you get to working with all these governments? Is it just because NIAF's been around so long? Like,
NIAF has deservedly gained the reputation of really representing the Italian American community on a national scale. And I'll give you just one example. The Italian foreign minister was interviewed in Italy just the other day about President Biden stepping down and Vice President Harris becoming the Democratic candidate. And the foreign minister said something to the effect of, for Italy, they are confident that no matter who wins the election, relations will be good because there's a very important Italian-American community, and then he went on to specifically talk about the importance of NIAF and what a bridge it is between Italy and the United States. And we just showed that in an event that we had 2 weeks ago. We honored the Supreme Commander of NATO in Europe, because there was the NATO conference taking place in Washington, and we honored General Cavoli, who's an Italian-American who speaks perfect Italian. I was so impressed. And he is the NATO Supreme Commander, so he is guarding Italy. He is of Italian descent, and so we had both the Italian Foreign Minister and the Italian Defense Minister present at this event, where we presented General Cavoli with our Fiorella LaGuardia medal. So that just goes to show you the kind of close symbiotic relationship that there is between Italy and the United States through NIAF.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you guys have any goals you're working on actively right now, just in general?
Yeah, so we are trying to really expand what we do with youth. In a couple of different ways. We're trying to grow our Voyage of Discovery program, which is the program I was telling you where we take young Italian Americans to Italy. But we're also looking at that next generation, young Italian Americans that are excelling already in their careers, somewhere between the late 20s and 40. And so we have created, through the generosity of one of our board members, Daniel Dalella, the Dalella Fellows program, where we're going to take a dozen Italian Americans who are already excelling in their chosen field, whether that be in the media or in the corporate world, in politics, to Italy to participate in the Ambrosetti conference that I was telling you about earlier. So they'll be able to learn about what is happening in Italy from a business standpoint, and then they're going to go down to Rome and meet with the U.S. ambassador to Italy and Italian political officials, so that they will come back to the United States with a greater appreciation of how Italy functions from both a political and economic perspective, and hopefully be the next generation of leadership for our foundation.
Yeah, and I feel like that's huge. Just when I was at the event, I met a few of the people that went on the Voyage of Discovery, and you could tell like their passion for Italian heritage was
It really is a
way deeper.
transformational experience. And this year, I'm proud to say that we had our first Canadian participant because
Really?
Earlier this year, we signed an accord with CIPA, which is the Canadian Italian Business and Professional Association. And they're one of the most important groups in Canada. They're a national group with chapters throughout Canada. And so as such, we are hoping to unite the Italian and Canadian, or the American Italian and Canadian Italian diasporas into one North American diaspora, with the power of being able to claim that we have more than 20 million citizens of Italian descent in both Canada and the United States. So we're very proud of that initiative. And for the first time at our New York gala, since we had a delegation of Italo-Canadians there to sign our accord, we in addition to playing the Italian anthem and the American anthem, also played the Canadian anthem. So it was really a nice moment. It showed the unity between the two communities.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially Canada, there's a huge Italian population in Toronto, and they're
absolutely. And a more recent one, because as you probably know, it was more difficult after World War II, immigration-wise, to immigrate to the United States. So those Italians that were immigrating to North America after World War II largely went to Canada. And so they have a more recent immigration that in many ways is more in touch with their roots
100%
than we are, just because they're more recent.
Yeah, we have some cousins in Toronto, and they're more hardcore than even us probably. They do all the traditions. They fully know the language, everybody. I mean, it's more dialect than it is the official language.
Well,
but
that's all right. Language is key, though, and that's another aspect of what we try and do, is promote the Italian language, because to really understand the culture, you have to make an effort to
100%
learn the language, and we're certainly promoters of that. And we are also promoters of the latest initiative of the Italian government, which is roots tourism. So what they're trying to do is get the diaspora from all over the world to go back and discover the hometowns of their grandparents and great-grandparents. So we are working with the Italian government to promote that program.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's something I want to do for sure, see where my grandfather's house in Cosenza, Calabria was. I feel like it'd be a game changer. So That's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the NIAF, like events you got coming up the rest of the year, things
So
like that.
we have our big gala, the one that you were at
Yeah.
last year, where I can already announce a couple of the great honorees that we have. We have Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, who is one of the major players in the administration, and then we have Admiral Franchetti, who is the female Chief of Naval Operations, so the head of the Navy on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So two great female honorees right off the bat, and we are working on securing a lot more honorees. So we'll have another great roster of honorees at this year's Washington Gala, which for all of your listeners is the 26th of October.
Okay, what's it like having relationships with all these people in government and just celebrities and all? Like, what's it like?
You know, I have to say it's a lot of fun. It's not something I was unused to, because over the course of about 30 years in hospitality, especially working at the Hilton Chicago, where everyone passes through, I've had the good fortune, for example, of meeting every U.S. president since Ronald Reagan. So
oh my God!
But it's fun, and what makes it fun is that there are so many people that are so proud of their heritage, and I may not agree with all of them on all of their views, but again, as long as they are proud Italian Americans, that gives us something in common to share, and we should celebrate that.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I try to tell people too. Like, even if you're 1% Italian or something, try to get involved. Like, don't be. I feel like some people are discouraged because they don't know the language, or they never been to Italy, or they never.
A little Italian goes a long way.
Yeah.
And as we get further and further away from those that are 100% of Italian descent, because let's face it, we live in America. We live in a multicultural society. You're going to fall in love with somebody that is not necessarily 100% Italian, and that is fine. But the fact that you are going to perhaps have children that are at least going to be part Italian, they should know and celebrate that, because it is an incomparable culture. I mean, when you think about the fact that there are more UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Italy, a country of some 60 million people that occupies a small fraction of the Earth's surface, that tells you the genius of what it means to be Italian, and that should be celebrated. Everyone should be proud of that.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's awesome. Is there anything you want to say to people listening, how to actively get involved with your organization a little bit more?
Absolutely. Just go to our website, NIAF.org, and take a look at all of the wonderful programs that we have, and all of the membership categories. We have various memberships that really are commensurate with anybody's budget, starting from $125 a year, going up to $2,500 a year, with different benefits to each level of membership. So it's affordable for everyone, and if you want to maintain a voice for your community in Washington, then please become a part of the National Italian American Foundation.
100%. You summed it up great. All right, Robert, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
It was a real pleasure, Mike.
Yeah, no, like
thanks
I said,
for all you do.
Yeah, thanks for everything you do too. Like I said, it's an honor having you here and just having a relationship. Thank you.
Grazie mille.
Yeah, grazie.